The dim glow of paper lanterns hung low over the worn wooden tables of Hans' noodle house, casting flickering shadows that danced like secrets on the faded red walls. Rain pattered against the fogged windows, a relentless soul drizzle that blurred the neon signs of the bustling street outside. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of simmering kimchi jjigae and sizzling gochujang, undercut by the faint, musty tang of old raincoats dripping from the coat rack. It was a slow Tuesday evening in this corner of the city's little Korea district, the kind of place where locals came to escape the grind, tired office workers nursing bowls of bibimbap, a few elderly patrons reminiscing over soju. Ji-yeon wiped her hands on her apron, the fabric rough against her calloused palms. At 28, she had the steady rhythm of someone who'd shouldered too much too young, orphaned young, raised by a mother who vanished into the shadows of odd jobs and unexplained absences. Now, Ji-yeon poured her life into this shift, serving plates with a quiet efficiency that masked the ache of unanswered questions. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her eyes, sharp, observant, scanned the empty tables. The restaurant was hers to close tonight, a small victory in a world that felt perpetually off balance. The bell above the door tinkled, admitting a gust of damp air, and an elderly man who leaned heavily on a polished ebony cane. He was Korean through and through, and his face etched with the deep lines of a life spent navigating hardships, silver hair thinning under a flat cap, a wool overcoat frayed at the cuffs. He shuffled to a corner booth, the cane tapping a deliberate rhythm on the linoleum floor, like Morse code from another era. Ji-yeon approached with a menu, her smile polite but guarded. "Annyeonghaseyo, ajushi. What can I get started for you?" He looked up, his eyes milky with age but piercing, as if appraising her soul. "Just tea, miss. Green, if you have it. And some mandu, perhaps." His voice was gravelly, laced with the faint lilt of Busan dialect, the kind that spoke of fishing villages and forgotten wars. As she nodded and turned to the kitchen, he reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small, yellowed photograph. It slipped from his fingers, fluttering to the table like a fallen leaf. Ji-yeon paused at the pass-through window, glancing back. The photo caught her eye, a black and white snapshot, edges curled from time. She stepped closer, intending to hand it back, but froze. In the image, a younger woman laughed beside a stern-faced man in a tailored suit, their arms linked under the cherry blossoms of some long-ago spring. The woman's face was unmistakable, high cheekbones, the same determined set to her jaw. Ji-yeon's mother, Min-soo, in her early 30s, vibrant and alive, in a way Ji-yeon had only glimpsed in faded memories, but it was the man beside her that twisted the knife. Broad-shouldered, with intricate tattoos peeking from his collar, Irizumi, the kind whispered about in hushed tones, the Japanese Yakuza boss known as Hiroshi Tanaka. Ji-yeon had seen his face in news clips, grainy photos from raids on smuggling rings that spanned Tokyo to Incheon. Her mother, entangled with him, the impossibility of it rooted her to the spot. That's my mom," she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. The old man snatched the photo, but not before his hand trembled. His cane clattered to the floor, rolling under the table with a hollow echo that cut through the hum of the kitchen exhaust. He stared at her, mouth agape, the color draining from his weathered cheeks. Her daughter?" His voice cracked, eyes widening as if she'd uttered a curse. He gripped the table edge, knuckles whitening. "Min-soo's girl, here, in this place?" Ji-yeon knelt to retrieve the cane, her mind racing. The photo burned in her memory, her mother, smiling with a man whose empire was built on docks and shadowed deals, Yakuza fingers in everything from counterfeit goods to underground loans. Why would Min-soo, who had raised her on stories of hard work and staying clear of trouble, pose with him, and this grandfatherly stranger, clutching the evidence like a talisman? What did he know? She straightened, handing him the cane, her pulse thudding in her ears. Ajushi, how do you have that? Who are you? He leaned forward, voice dropping to an urgent murmur as the rain outside intensified, drumming like distant gunfire. Name's Kim Tae-ho. I worked the ports in Busan back when your mother, she saved me once, pulled me from a debt that would have ended me. That photo, it's from '98, a favor Hiroshi owed her. But things turned sour. Rivals, you see. The Inagawa Kai, they never forgave a crossover like that. Minsu vanished to protect you, I think, and now... He trailed off, glancing toward the window where headlights sliced through the downpour, a black sedan idling across the street. Ji-yeon's stomach knotted. She'd always assumed her mother's absence was abandonment, a string of bad choices leading to silence. But this? Surveillance? Yakuza entanglements? The sedan's tinted windows stared back like unblinking eyes, and she caught the faint glow of a cigarette ember inside. What do you mean now? Why show me this? Taeho's gaze hardened, the frailty sloughing away like an old skin. Because the past doesn't stay buried, child. Hiroshi's been watching. Old loyalties, new threats. That photo? It's a ledger of favors unpaid. And if they know you're her blood... He paused as the kitchen door swung open, the cook calling her name, but the words hung heavy, if they know you're next. She forced a nod, pouring his tea with hands that shook just enough to slosh the liquid. The steam rose like a veil, but it couldn't hide the chill settling in her bones. As Tae-ho pocketed the photo, his eyes flicked to the sedan again. Had it moved closer? The bell tinkled as another patron entered. But Ji-yeon's focus narrowed to the old man. What debt had her mother paid, and why was it resurfacing now, pulling her into a web of rival factions and whispered codes? By the time she cleared his plate, the rain had eased, but the tension coiled tighter. Tae-ho stood, cane steady now, and pressed a worn business card into her palm, simple, with a phone number and the name Harbor Imports. Call me tomorrow. Before they find you first. He shuffled out into the night, leaving the booth empty except for the faint scent of his pipe tobacco. Ji-yeon locked the door behind the last customer, the neon closed sign buzzing to life. She stared at the card, the sedan's taillights long vanished into the alley. Was it coincidence? Or had those watchers been waiting for her to see the photo? And if her mother had danced with devils, what shadows were now closing in on her daughter's door? The morning sun filtered through the grimy blinds of Ji-yeon's cramped apartment above the noodle house, casting striped shadows across the cluttered kitchenette. The air smelled of stale coffee and yesterday's rain-soaked clothes hanging on a drying rack, the faint hum of traffic from the street below, a constant reminder that Seoul never slept. She hadn't slept much herself, tossing through the night, the yellowed photo replaying in her mind like a glitchy film reel, her mother's laugh frozen in time beside that tattooed stranger, Hiroshi Tanaka, and the old man, Tae-ho, with his Busan gravel and cryptic warnings. The business card lay on the counter, its edges already curling from her restless fingers. Ji-yeon poured herself a mug of instant noodles broth, her version of breakfast, staring at the phone in her other hand. Call him, he'd said, before they find you first. Paranoia, she told herself. Her mother had always been a ghost, flitting in and out with envelopes of cash and excuses about old friends in Japan. But Yakuza, rivals like the Inagawa Kai. It sounded like the plot of one of those gritty dramas she binged after closing time, not her life. Still, the sedan from last night lingered in her thoughts, the ember of that cigarette, the way it had idled just long enough to make her skin crawl. She dialed the number before she could talk herself out of it. The line crackled twice, then connected. Harbor Imports, a voice answered, clipped and professional like a dockside dispatcher. It's Ji-yeon. From the restaurant, the girl in the photo. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. A pause, then Teho's rasp. "Good. Meet me at the old pier, warehouse district. Noon. Come alone. No phone. No purse. They'll trace it." The line went dead. She glanced out the window, half expecting that black sedan to materialize in the alley. Ridiculous. But she left her smartphone charging, slipping only her keys and a wad of bills into her jeans pocket. The subway ride to the docks was a blur of fluorescent lights and muffled announcements. The car's sway mirroring the unease in her gut. Incheon Port loomed as she emerged, a labyrinth of cranes and shipping containers stacked like rusted monoliths under a steel-grey sky. Gulls wheeled overhead, their cries sharp against the distant rumble of cargo engines and the salty tang of the Han River mingling with diesel fumes. Teho waited by a chain-link fence near Warehouse 17, his cane planted like a sentinel. He looked smaller in the daylight, the overcoat flapping in the harbour wind, but his eyes scanned the perimeter with the vigilance of someone who'd survived portside skirmishes. "You came," he said, no warmth in it, just fact. He nodded toward a weathered door, padlocked but ajar. Inside. Quick. The warehouse interior was a cavern of shadows, lit by shafts of light piercing cracked skylights. The air was heavy, with the scent of brine and forgotten fish crates, pallets of what looked like legitimate imports, electronics, textiles, pushing dust motes into lazy spirals. Teho led her to a metal desk, cluttered with manifests, and a flickering laptop, its screen guarded by a password prompt. He eased into a creaky chair, gesturing for her to sit opposite. "Your mother," he began, voice low as if the walls had ears, "wasn't just some waitress drifting ports. Min Soo worked the smuggling lines in the 90s. Couriers for Hiroshi's crew. Not deep in, mind you. She handled the clean side, falsified papers, quiet handoffs at the docks. Hiroshi owed her big after a deal went south in 98. Inagawa Kai Muscle cornered him during a cherry blossom meet, thought he was poaching territory. Minsu slipped him a burner phone tip, got him out through a back tunnel under the river. That photo snapped right after, a thank you from his world. Ji-yeon's fingers tightened on the desk edge, the cold metal grounding her. She never said, raised me on stay straight, work hard. Then poof, gone when I was 16, letters from Tokyo, then nothing. Teho's gaze softened, just a fraction. She cut ties to shield you. Hiroshi's code, no innocence touched. But codes break. Inagawa's been circling again. Old grudge. Word is, they're sniffing for leverage. That photo surfaced last month in a raided safe house. Hiroshi's rivals waving it like a flag. If they connect you. He trailed off, pulling a folded ledger from a drawer. Yellowed pages, handwritten in tight Hangul and kanji, dates, shipments, names. See here. Min Soo's entries. Debts marked paid, but Hiroshi's side still lists one open. Protection for her kin. She leaned in, scanning the lines. A notation from 2005. MS extraction. Busan route. Inagawa tale evaded via false manifest. Her pulse quickened. False manifests, common enough in port logistics, a swapped container number to dodge customs scans. But this was personal. Why tell me now? What's changed? He tapped the ledger. Hiroshi's in Seoul. Low profile, but his details been spotted. Black SUVs, rotated plates. They know about the photo leak. And last night, that sedan outside your place? Not random. Inagawa scouts, testing waters. As if on cue, a distant engine growled outside, tires crunching gravel. Taiho's head snapped up, hand drifting to his coat pocket, a small pistol outline visible. Ji-yeon's breath hitched. She stood, peering through a grimy window. Two men in dark jackets lingered by a container, one lighting a smoke, the other checking a phone. Behavioral tells. The way the smoker kept his back to the warehouse, scanning for eyes. They're watching us? Worse, probing. Teho closed the ledger, sliding it toward her. Take it. Clues inside, plate numbers from Tails, guard shifts at Hiroshi's safe house. But if you run with this, you're in. Dinner tonight, neutral ground. Hiroshi wants to meet the daughter. Gratitude, he calls it. Protection. The word hung like the warehouse's damp chill. Gratitude from a Yakuza boss or a debt pulling her under. Outside, the men moved closer, one gesturing to the door. A burner phone buzzed in Taiho's pocket. He silenced it without looking. Decide quick. They're jamming the exit soon or worse. Ji-yeon's mind raced. Autonomy versus the pull of answers. Her mother's ghost demanding she step into the shadows. The ledger felt heavy in her hands, its pages whispering of betrayals and hidden roots. But as the door rattled faintly, wind or a hand testing the lock, she nodded. Tell him I'll come, but on my terms. Taiho's lips twitched, almost a smile. Smart girl, like your mother. He scribbled an address on a scrap. A luxury restaurant overlooking the river, private booth reserved. As she slipped out a side exit, the harbor wind whipping her hair, she caught the glint of a tail light vanishing around a corner. Was it Hiroshi's watch, or the rivals closing the net? And what price would gratitude exact when the past finally dragged her under? The twilight haze settled over Seoul like a shroud, the Han River's surface rippling under the sodium glow of bridge lights, carrying the faint metallic tang of urban runoff mixed with exhaust from ferries chugging downstream. Ji-yeon stood at her apartment window, the ledger tucked into a hidden pocket of her coat, its weight a constant reminder of the secrets it held. The address Tae-ho had scrawled led to the Lotus Pavilion, a riverside restaurant perched on the edge of Gangnam's glittering facade. Neutral ground, he'd called it, but she knew better. Places like that didn't stay neutral in the world of favors and grudges. They were stages for deals sealed with glances and veiled threats. She'd changed into a simple black dress, the fabric whispering against her skin as she moved, practical yet unassuming. No jewelry to snag, nothing that screamed vulnerability. Her reflection in the cracked mirror showed eyes shadowed by doubt, the pull between curiosity and self-preservation warring in her chest. Hiroshi Tanaka, Yakuza boss, architect of smuggling empires from Yokohama to Busan. Gratitude, Tae-ho had said, but gratitude from men like him came laced with strings, invisible tripwires leading straight to control. Still, the ledger's clues burned in her mind, plate numbers of Inagawa scouts, rotations for Hiroshi's safe house guards, a 2012 entry noting a compromised courier that matched her mother's disappearance timeline. Answers waited across the river, or so she hoped. A Blacktown car pulled up outside precisely at 7, its engine a low purr that cut through the evening hum of street vendors hawking teokbokki. The driver, a stocky man in a crisp suit, didn't exit. He simply nodded through the tinted glass as she approached. No name, no words, just the door clicking open like an invitation to judgment. Ji-yeon slid into the leather seat, the scent of polished wood and faint cologne enveloping her. The partition between front and back rising with a soft whir. Isolated already, she gripped her knees, scanning the side mirror. No obvious tails, but the traffic's flow felt orchestrated, cars parting like reluctant waves. The drive wound along the riverbank, the car's tires hissing on wet asphalt, past docks where cranes groaned under floodlights. Unloading crates stamped with innocuous labels, electronics from Shenzhen, textiles from Osaka. But she knew the drill now. Those manifests hid more, just like the ledger's coded entries. A burner phone vibrated in the door pocket. Hers? No, the driver's. He answered in clipped Japanese, voice muffled, then glanced back via the rear view, his eyes flat as river stones. Mr. Tanaka sends his regards. Dinner will be private. Private. The word echoed her growing unease. As they crossed the bridge, the city lights smeared into streaks, and she spotted it. A silver sedan 2 cars back, its plates half obscured by rain-slicked grime. One of the numbers matched a ledger notation, Inagawa Scout, rotated every 48 hours. Her pulse quickened. Was it coincidence, or had the rivals anticipated this meet? She shifted, testing the door handle, child-locked, of course. Autonomy slipping away with every kilometer. The Lotus Pavilion rose like a glass jewel against the night, its facade a cascade of illuminated panels reflecting the river's dark flow. Valets in silk ties whisked the car away, and a hostess, poised, expressionless, escorted her through a foyer humming with low conversations and the clink of crystal. The air carried notes of grilled wagyu and aged sake, undercut by the subtle ozone of high-end security systems. Discreet cameras in the crown molding, their lenses winking like distant stars. Up a private elevator, the numbers climbing to the penthouse level, and then a hallway lined with sliding shoji screens, each etched with lotus motifs that hid who knew what surveillance. The booth overlooked the river, a semicircle of velvet cushions around a low table set for two. Hiroshi Tanaka waited there, not the monstrous figure of tabloid lore, but a man in his late 50s, silver threading his close-cropped hair, his suit tailored to conceal the bulk of a lifetime's guarded power. Tattoos snaked subtly from his cuffs, dragons coiling in ink, a nod to his Oyabun status. He rose slightly as she entered, a gesture of old-world courtesy, his eyes appraising her with the same piercing calm she'd seen in the photo. "Ji-yon," he said, voice smooth as river silk, laced with a faint Osaka accent. "You honor me by coming. Sit, the abalone is fresh from the bay." She lowered herself opposite him, the cushion yielding under her, the river's murmur filtering through the glass wall like a third presence at the table. No guards in sight, but she felt them. The faint crackle of earpieces beyond the screens, the shadow of a figure pacing the hallway. "Mr. Tanaka, or should I say Hiroshi?" Teiho said this was about gratitude. He poured sake from a porcelain ewer, the steam curling like secrets. "Gratitude, yes. Your mother saved my life in '98. A tip on a tunnel route under the Han. Inagawa had the docks locked, but she knew the guard shifts, the access codes from a falsified manifest. I owe her a debt that time hasn't erased." His gaze held hers, steady. Probing for tells, did she flinch at the mention of rivals? And now her blood walks the same paths. The photo. It stirred old waters. Inagawa sees it as leverage. They watch you, test your routines. Ji-yon's fingers tightened around the cup, the warm ceramic a stark contrast to the chill in her veins. "Watch me? Like the sedan last night? Or the one tailing us here?" She watched his reaction, a subtle tightening of his jaw, the code of composure cracking just enough. He set down his cup, leaning forward. "Perceptive, like Min-Su. The ledger Tai-Ho gave you, use it. Plates, rotations. But know this, my code protects innocence. You are hers, so you are mine to shield. Stay close, and the shadows stay at bay." Possessiveness laced his words. A velvet glove over iron, pulling at her independence like the river's current. The server arrived with platters, sashimi glistening under lantern light, the scent of sesame and soy sharp in the air. But Ji-yon's appetite fled as a distant rumble echoed. Not thunder, but the low growl of engines outside. Through the glass, she glimpsed headlights banking sharply on the access road, a convoy, or an intercept. Hiroshi's hand paused mid-reach for his chopsticks, his eyes flicking to a hidden earpiece. They moved faster than expected. Tension coiled, the booth's intimacy turning claustrophobic. Was this protection, or the first knot in a noose, tightening around her choices? As a screen slid open behind him, revealing a guard with a terse nod, Ji-yon wondered. If gratitude bound her to this man and his world, what betrayal would snap it, and who would pay the price when the rivals breached the perimeter? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The screens parted like whispers in the dim light of the Lotus Pavilion, admitting two suited men whose faces were masks of controlled urgency. The air thickened with the sharp scent of impending rain, carried in from the river through a cracked vent, mingling uneasily with the lingering aroma of seared abalone and warm sake. Ji-yon's heart hammered against her ribs, each beat echoing the low thrum of engines revving outside, tires screeching on the wet access road, headlights slicing through the night like accusatory fingers. Hiroshi remained seated, his posture unchanging, but his fingers drummed once on the table's edge, a subtle tell of calculation amid the storm brewing beyond the glass. "Secure the perimeter," he murmured to the lead guard, a burly figure with a shaved head and the faint bulge of a holster under his jacket. The man nodded, barking clipped orders into a wrist mic, the static crackle cutting through the booth's fragile calm. Ji-yon shifted on the cushion, her eyes darting to the river view. 3 black SUVs had pulled up at the valet stand, doors slamming in unison, figures spilling out with the precision of a well-rehearsed escort. But beyond them, in the shadows of the bridge, a silver sedan idled, its plates catching the light, matching the ledger's scrawled notation for Inagawa scouts. Not an ally, a probe. Hiroshi's gaze returned to her, steady as the Han's undercurrent. "This is what I meant. They test boundaries like rats in the docks. The photo was their bait, leaked to draw you out, to see if Minsu's line still holds value." He pushed a small device across the table, a burner phone, its screen dark and unassuming. "Take it, untraceable. Call if you need extraction. My people monitor the rotations. Every hour on the hour, they sweep the river paths." Ji-yon's hand hovered over the phone, the cool plastic a lifeline or a leash. Autonomy clashed with the raw pull of survival. Her mother's ethics, stay straight, avoid the shadows, warred with the ledger's cold facts. Extraction. From what? Your world or theirs? Her voice was low, edged with the same steel she'd used to question Tae-ho at the warehouse. The guards moved now, one positioning at the elevator, the other scanning the hallway through a peephole in the shoji. A muffled thud echoed from the foyer below, perhaps a dropped tray or the first sign of intrusion. Hiroshi's expression hardened, the dragons on his cufflinks seeming to writhe in the lantern glow. From both, if it comes to it. Minsu chose independence once, vanished into Busan back alleys with forged papers and a false name. But the Inagawa don't forget. They hit a convoy last week, tampered brakes on a truck hauling textiles from Yokohama. Driver walked away, but the message was clear. Crossovers pay in blood. He paused as the burner buzzed once in her grasp, a single vibration like a warning pulse. The screen lit, a text from an unknown number. "Eyes on the bridge. Move now." Tension ratcheted, the booth's velvet walls closing in. Ji-yon pocketed the phone, her mind flashing to the ledger's entries. Guard rotations every 45 minutes at Hiroshi's safe house. A 2015 notation of an intercepted message via a compromised dockside radio. Human error, always the weak link. A bribed informant, a slipped code. Tae-ho mentioned a debt, protection for her kin. "Is that why you're here? Collecting on it?" Hiroshi's laugh was soft, devoid of mirth, like wind over the river's chop. "Collecting? No, honoring. My code. Debts repaid, innocence shielded. Your mother pulled me from a tunnel trap. Inagawa had jammed the exits with false alarms, staged a blackout to flush us out. She knew the maintenance schedules, the emergency lights' blind spots. I swore then, her family untouched." But his eyes betrayed the strain, a flicker of possessiveness that mirrored the rival's greed. Loyalty or control? The line blurred as another engine roared closer. The silver sedan's lights banking toward the restaurant's rear entrance. The lead guard reappeared, face taut. "Boss, they're blocking the service road. 2 vehicles, no plates visible. We have a window. Elevator to the garage. Convoy waiting." Hiroshi stood, extending a hand, not grabbing but offering, the gesture heavy with implication. Ji-yeon rose without taking it, her independence a fragile armor against the chaos. The elevator doors slid open with a chime, the descent a stomach-lurching drop into the unknown, fluorescent strips buzzing overhead like angry hornets. The garage smelled of oil and concrete dust, the air cooler, laced with the metallic bite of exhaust from idling SUVs. They piled into the lead vehicle, Hiroshi beside her in the shadowed back seat, his detail fanning out in a tight formation. Tires spun on the slick ramp, bursting into the night where rain now lashed the windshield in sheets. The driver weaved through Gangnam's arteries, horns blaring as they cut off a taxi, the river a blurred ribbon to their left. Ji-yeon gripped the door handle, scanning the mirrors. The silver sedan gave chase, weaving through traffic with reckless precision, its headlights a persistent glare. "How do we lose them?" she asked, voice steady despite the adrenaline surge. "Old routes," Hiroshi replied, tapping the driver on the shoulder. "Take the underpass, 3rd exit, false manifest style." The car plunged into a tunnel, the world narrowing to tiled walls slick with condensation and the sodium hum of overhead lamps. Echoes amplified every shift, every rev. Behind them, the sedan's engine snarled, closing the gap. A sudden jolt, something clipped their rear bumper, sparks flying in the mirror's reflection. Not an accident, deliberate, a bump to force a spin on the wet curve. The driver corrected, cursing under his breath in Japanese, while Hiroshi pulled a concealed tablet from the seat compartment. Its screen glowed with a live feed, grainy CCTV from the tunnel's access cams, hacked via a port-side server Ji-yeon recognized from the ledger. Inagawa's weak spot, outdated encryption from a 2010 upgrade. "There, jammer signal," he said, zooming on a blip. "They're trying to black out the lights." Sure enough, the tunnel plunged into partial darkness, emergency strips flickering to life in erratic pulses. The sedan surged, its side mirror shattering against theirs in a grind of metal. Ji-yeon's breath caught as the convoy splintered, a decoy SUV peeling off to draw fire, its taillights vanishing into a side fork. Human conflict boiled. Hiroshi's code demanded protection, but at what cost to his men? She spotted a behavioral tell in the pursuing driver, hesitation at the fork, a glance to his passenger. Internal betrayal, or just the fog of pursuit? "The ledger mentioned tampered alarms," she said, piecing it aloud. "Like this, disrupt the flow, pick off the stragglers." Hiroshi nodded, respect flickering in his eyes. "Exactly. But we know their plays." The tunnel spat them onto a warehouse district side street, the rain hammering down on rusted roofs, the air thick with the brine of nearby docks. The sedan faltered, blocked by a sudden convoy blockade. Hiroshi's second team materialized from a hidden garage like ghosts from the ledger's manifests. Tires smoked as it reversed, but not before a side door cracked open, a figure tumbling out into the shadows. The lead SUV accelerated toward a safe house on the outskirts, its silhouette a fortress of steel and surveillance. Ji-yeon exhaled, the adrenaline ebbing into a wary calm, but questions lingered like the rain's chill. Protection secured, but the chase had exposed cracks, Inagawa's reach, Hiroshi's reliance on her mother's old tricks. As the safe-house gates groaned open, floodlights bathing them in harsh white, she wondered, was this victory a step toward trust, or the moment the debt truly claimed her, binding her deeper into a world where every shadow hid a knife? And what had that fallen figure from the sedan signaled? Retreat, or the call for reinforcements closing in from the river's edge? The safe house loomed on the outskirts of Incheon's warehouse district, a squat concrete bunker disguised as an abandoned shipping office, its walls scarred by years of salt air and neglect. Floodlights carved harsh angles across the gravel drive, illuminating chain-link fences topped with razor wire that hummed faintly from embedded sensors. The air hung heavy with the brine of the Han River estuary, mingled with the acrid bite of diesel from idling generators buried underground. Hiroshi's precautionary measure against blackouts, a nod to past ambushes detailed in the ledger's faded entries. Ji-yeon stepped from the SUV, her shoes crunching on loose stones. The rain, now a steady drizzle that soaked through her dress and chilled her to the bone. The adrenaline from the tunnel chase ebbed, leaving a hollow ache, but her eyes scanned the perimeter. Guards in unmarked jackets patrolling with suppressed earpieces, their rotations matching the ledger's notes. 15 minutes on, 5 off, eyes on the river approach. Hiroshi exited behind her, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder, revealing the holstered outline at his waist. No flourish, just the quiet authority of a man who'd turned narrow escapes into routine. "Inside," he said, voice low, guiding her with a light touch at her elbow. Possessive yet restrained, testing her boundaries without forcing them. The door was a reinforced slab, unlocked by a retinal scan that beeped softly, the mechanism's green glow reflecting in his eyes like a predator's satisfaction. The interior was Spartan, exposed ducts overhead, whispering cooled air, a central room furnished with mismatched chairs around a scarred oak table, walls lined with monitors, flickering feeds from dockside cams and traffic nodes. The scent of instant ramen and gun oil permeated the space, a far cry from the Lotus Pavilion's elegance, underscoring the shift from negotiation to siege. Ji-yeon shrugged off his touch, claiming a chair at the table's edge, her independence a deliberate anchor amid the uncertainty. The burner phone weighed heavy in her pocket, its single text a stark reminder. Eyes on the bridge. That figure who fell from the sedan, Inagawa scout or one of yours gone rogue. She pulled the ledger from her coat, flipping to a page of scribbled kanji, 2018 notation on a compromised driver, bribed with a promise of territory carve-out. Behavioral tells from the chase replayed in her mind, the hesitation at the fork, the passenger's frantic gesture before the tumble. Hiroshi poured water from a filtered jug into 2 glasses, the liquid glugging steadily as he considered her. Scout, most likely. Inagawa's playbook. Infiltrate, then extract intel via tail or tamper. Last month they hit a supply run, swapped a manifest for fireworks instead of meds, caused a dockside blaze to cover a data grab. He slid a glass toward her, sitting opposite. His posture relaxed but eyes alert, flicking to a monitor where the silver sedan's wreckage smoldered under distant police lights. No sirens yet. Hiroshi's influence bought time, calls to sympathetic port officials delaying response. The fall? Human error, wet roads, clipped bumper, but it buys us nothing if they pinged our route. Tension simmered as a guard entered, rain dripping from his cap, handing Hiroshi a tablet. Boss, intercepted chatter, burner relay from the river tunnel. They're mobilizing a second team, warehouse flank. Plates matched the ledger, rotated every 72 hours, false customs tags. The guard's voice was clipped, laced with the fatigue of endless vigilance, a microcosm of the human conflicts gnawing at Hiroshi's empire. Loyalty tested by fear, men wondering if the code shielded them or just the boss. Ji-yeon leaned in, tracing the tablet's map. Red dots pulsing along the estuary, converging on their position like veins in a closing fist. Partial discovery hit her. The rivals weren't random. The photo leak had been deliberate, a breadcrumb to Ji-yeon, leveraging her mother's old ties to fracture Hiroshi's perimeter. "Why me?" she pressed, voice steady despite the knot in her gut. "If your code protects innocence, send me away. Let me vanish like she did. New name, Busan bus ticket." But even as she spoke, autonomy clashed with the pull of unearthed truths. The ledger's pages detailed Minsu's final favor, a 2005 extraction via a storm-diverted ferry, evading Inagawa by jamming their radio with a cheap signal blocker from a harbor electronics stall. Practical, grounded, no miracles, just logistics and grit. Hiroshi's gaze softened, a rare fracture in his composure, revealing the man behind the Oyabun. A widower who'd lost his own daughter to a rival hit in '05, the grief fueling his restraint. Vanish and leave the debt open. Minzu didn't run for herself. She built walls for you. Now Inagawa smells weakness. That sedan wasn't chance. They traced Teiho's call, cross-referenced restaurant cams, facial rec from a leaked port database. He tapped the tablet, pulling up a grainy still. Ji-yeon at the noodle house window, time-stamped last night. Exposure, raw and technological. Courtesy of institutional limits. Overworked custom servers ripe for hacks. The room's lights flickered once, a false alarm from the storm, but it ratcheted the unease. Outside, thunder grumbled over the river, masking the crunch of gravel. Another vehicle approaching? Guards tensed, hands drifting to sides, the air electric with suspicion. Hiroshi stood, signaling a sweep, his code manifesting in quiet command. No shots unless breached. Innocence first. Ji-yeon rose too, pulse racing, the push-pull intensifying. Trust him for answers or bolt for the door, risking the shadows alone. As the monitors glitched, one feed capturing a figure slipping along the fence line. Dark jacket, deliberate gait, burner phone to ear. The revelation edged closer. The true threat wasn't the chase, but the turncoat within. A guard's subtle shift in rotation, a whispered tip to rivals. Hiroshi's hand brushed hers, not grabbing, but steadying. Stay. We end this together. But as distant shouts echoed from the perimeter, muffled by rain, Ji-yeon wondered, was this protection forging a bond, or the cost of loyalty exposing them all? With the river's rising tide swallowing escape routes one by one, the rain intensified outside the safe house, sheets slamming against the concrete walls like an assault from the estuary, the Han River's fury amplifying every creak and drip within. Ji-yeon's skin prickled under the damp fabric of her dress, the room's monitors casting erratic blue flickers across the scarred oak table, where the ledger lay open like a dissected heart. Hiroshi paced to the window, a reinforced pane smeared with condensation, his silhouette framed by the floodlight's harsh glare. The air inside grew thicker, laced with the ozone tang of the storm and the faint metallic whiff of anxiety sweat from the guards clustered near the door. One of them, stocky, with a fresh scar on his jaw, shifted his weight, eyes darting to the perimeter feed, a behavioral tell Ji-yeon clocked from the ledger's notes on compromised rotations, subtle unease, a glance too long at the exit. "Lock it down," Hiroshi ordered, his voice a low rumble that cut through the thunder's growl. The lead guard nodded, keying a sequence into a wall panel. Heavy bolts slid home with a mechanical thud, sealing them in like a vault. But the monitors betrayed the illusion of safety. One camera caught the fence line figure again, now crouched behind a stack of rusted barrels, phone pressed to ear. No face visible, but the posture screamed intent, not a random vagrant but a pro, timing his approach with the storm's cover. Ji-yeon flipped through the ledger, her fingers smudged with ink, landing on a 2019 entry. Inagawa plant, driver rotation breach via bribed port ledger access, evaded via false alarm diversion. Human error again, the weak seam in Hiroshi's armor. "Why trust your own?" she asked, voice steady but laced with suspicion, the push-pull of autonomy sharpening her words. Hiroshi turned, his eyes meeting hers across the dim room, the dragons on his cuffs catching the light like coiled warnings. Loyalty versus fear. His code demanded the former, but the latter gnawed at every empire. "Because I know their tells," he replied, tapping the tablet to zoom on the feed. That one's sloppy. Phone angle wrong for a clean relay. Internal, maybe. Tejo warned of a leak after the photo surfaced. He glanced at the scarred guard, who stiffened, hands flexing at his sides. You! Outer sweep! Now! The man hesitated, a beat too long, before grabbing a rain slicker and slipping out the side door, the hinges groaning against the wind. Ji-yon's pulse quickened, the ledger's clues aligned. A notation on subtle gestures, averted eyes during briefings. Betrayal simmered, not from rivals alone, but from within, ambition clashing with the Oyabun's iron rule. The burner phone in her pocket vibrated twice, short bursts, like Morse. She pulled it out, screen glowing, flank compromised, river tunnel access, go. From Tejo or a trap? The message's timestamp matched the warehouse meet. Untraceable but urgent. Outside, shouts pierced the storm, muffled barks in Japanese, then a sharp crack that wasn't thunder. Gunfire, suppressed, echoing off the warehouse roofs. Hiroshi's face tightened, the possessiveness in his stance yielding to raw command as he drew a compact pistol from his holster, the slide clicking with practiced ease. "Stay here," he said. But Ji-yon was already moving, snatching the tablet and ledger, her independence afire against the chaos. No, if this is about my mother, I end it my way. The door rattled under a gust or a shoulder. Monitors glitched again, one feed cutting to static as power surged. Deliberate, a jammer from the river approach, blacking out the perimeter lights in pulsing waves. They burst into the downpour, Hiroshi leading with the pistol low, water sluicing off his suit as they darted between shipping containers stacked like forgotten tombs. The air reeked of wet rust and cordite, the river's chop slapping against pilings nearby, a natural hazard turning the escape into a gauntlet. Ji-yon followed, shoes slipping on gravel. The tablet clutched like a shield, its map pulsing with red threats converging from the estuary tunnel. A rival flank using the storm's blackout to infiltrate. Headlights pierced the sheets of rain, two vans materializing from the shadows, doors sliding open to disgorge figures in black tactical gear, Inagawa muscle with faces obscured by balaclavas. No grand army, just efficient, logistics-driven assault, false plates from the ledger's manifests, timed to the guard rotation breach. Hiroshi fired twice, controlled bursts that dropped the lead intruder into the mud, the suppressor muffling the reports to wet pops. "Tunnel! Now!" he shouted over the gale, grabbing her arm. Not possessively, but urgently, pulling her toward a grated access point half buried in the embankment. The river's chill seeped through the bars, the tunnel mouth a yawning black maw, echoing with the water's roar. But as they pried the gate, rusted but oiled recently, another tell of inside job, a figure emerged from the van's flank. The scarred guard, now aligned with the attackers, burner phone in hand, signaling their position. "Traitor!" Hiroshi growled, raising his weapon, but Ji-yon shoved the tablet forward, screen alive with intercepted chatter, boss's kin secured, leverage for the photo debt. The guard's eyes widened, fear cracking his facade, ambition over prudence, a payout from Inagawa promising escape from the code's grind. He lunged, but Hiroshi's shot felled him cleanly, body slumping into the flood. No graphic spill, just the thud. Swallowed by the storm, the vans revved, tires spinning mud as they circled for a ram, but the convoy's distant hum answered. Hiroshi's extraction team, delayed by the jammer but closing via a pre-planned river bypass. They plunged into the tunnel, the world narrowing to dripping concrete and the slap of their footsteps, emergency lights flickering from a backup generator humming in the distance. Water pooled ankle-deep, cold as betrayal, the air thick with mold, and the faint hum of jammed signals fading behind. Ji-yon's breath came in gasps, the ledger's pages sodden but intact, clues to the guard's bribery. A discreet ledger entry for Harbor Payoff, 50 mil won. Partial victory, but the cost mounted. Exposure of the inner circle. Hiroshi's trust fractured. Your code, does it cover this? She panted, glancing back as flashlight beams danced at the entrance, rivals probing the jammed exit. It does now, he replied, voice strained but resolute, slamming a maintenance door behind them. A bulkhead from Minsu's old routes, access code punched from memory. The tunnel forked ahead, one path to the safe extraction point, the other a dead end flooded by the rising tide. Distant engines growled above, vibrations shaking loose grit from the ceiling. Trust versus suspicion peaked. Had the burner text been salvation, or the lure drawing them deeper? As they sprinted toward the fork, a new vibration rattled the phone. Convoy 2 Minius hold. Ji-yeon gripped Hiroshi's arm, the bond forging in the deluge. But the question lingered like the river's undertow. With betrayal's blade still fresh, could they outrun the flood? Or would the true treasure, her mother's legacy of shielded kin, drown them both in the undertow? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The tunnel's chill seeped into Ji-yeon's bones, the ankle-deep water splashing with every frantic step, carrying the river's murky tang and the echo of distant shouts muffled by the storm's roar. Concrete walls pressed close, slick with condensation and etched with decades of graffiti. Faded warnings in Hangul and Kanji from workers who'd long since retired. The emergency lights stuttered overhead, casting elongated shadows that danced like pursuers, their hum a fragile counterpoint to the grinding vibration of engines above. Hiroshi moved ahead, his pistol holstered now, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom to reveal the fork. Left to the extraction point, a grated service ladder leading to a concealed dockside ramp. Right, a flooded dead end where the hands tide lapped hungrily, threatening to rise with the estuary's swell. Ji-yeon's lungs burned, the sodden ledger clutched under her arm like a talisman, its pages bleeding ink but holding the final clues. A 2020 notation on tunnel vulnerabilities, Inagawa's favored infiltration route via bribed maintenance crews. The burner phone buzzed again in her pocket, insistent. Convoy inbound. 30 seconds. Flank clear. Trust surged through her doubt. Taeho's network, pieced from old port alliances, had jammed the rivals' relays with a portable signal blocker, bought cheap from a harbour stall and timed to the storm's interference. No magic, just logistics, human grit overriding the betrayal's sting. Left! Hiroshi barked, veering sharp, his hand brushing hers in the murk, a fleeting anchor amid the chaos. But as they rounded the bend, flashlight beams stabbed from behind, Inagawa scouts spilling into the tunnel mouth, their boots splashing in pursuit. 3 figures, tactical vests bulging under rain gear, one barking coordinates into a radio that crackled with static. The lead man's face twisted in recognition under the balaclava, scarred jaw, the turncoat's accomplice, eyes gleaming with the promise of leverage. The girl! Secure her. Boss wants the photo's heir alive. Hiroshi spun, firing a warning shot that ricocheted off the pipes with a metallic ping, buying seconds as the scouts dove for cover behind support struts. Water surged ankle to knee now, the tide's natural push turning the passage hazardous, currents tugging at their legs like insistent hands. Ji-yeon stumbled, the tablet slipping from her grip into the flow, its screen flickering out in a splash. Exposure's cost, data lost to the river, but the ledger's essence burned in her mind. Plate rotations, guard tells, the discrete payoffs that had cracked the safe house. "They're organized," she gasped, hauling herself up. "That radio, it's on your frequency. Another plant." His nod was grim. The code's weight etching deeper lines on his face, loyalty fractured, but not broken. The dead-end driver. He swapped SIM cards during rotation. Human conflict peaked, ambition's blade, a guard's fear of fading into irrelevance, slicing through the Oyabun's vows. A bullet whined past, embedding in the wall with a puff of dust, forcing them onward. The ladder loomed, rungs slick and corroded, Hiroshi boosting her up first. Possessiveness yielding to protection, his hands steady on her waist as she climbed, the river's chill forgotten in the adrenaline's fire. At the top, the grate yielded with a screech, spilling them onto the dockside ramp. A shadowed overhang of corrugated metal, crates stacked as makeshift barriers under the relentless downpour. The air hit fresh, laced with diesel and wet timber, the Han's surface churning black under sodium lights from the distant bridge. Headlights pierced the sheets. Hiroshi's convoy, 3 armored vans materializing from a fog-shrouded side channel, tires hydroplaning on the slick wharf as they braked hard. Doors flew open, Taeho's weathered face emerging from the lead vehicle. Kane swapped for a shotgun braced on the frame. "Here, move!" The scouts burst from the tunnel grate behind them, 2 firing wildly, suppressed pops lost in the gale, while the 3rd flanked wide, aiming to cut off the ramp. Hiroshi returned fire, dropping one with a leg shot that sent him splashing back into the water. No kill but neutralization, the code holding even in extremis. Ji-yeon sprinted, the ledger tumbling free as she dove into the van's open door, Taeho's arm hauling her in. "Your mother's roots saved us again," he grunted, the engine roaring to life. Hiroshi vaulted in last, the door slamming as bullets pinged off the reinforced panels. The convoy peeled out, vans forming a wedge to block the wharf. One peeling back as decoy to draw the remaining scouts into the river's hazard, tide-swollen currents that would sweep any pursuit into the pilings. No easy vanish, the Inagawa would regroup, their organization a hydra of old grudges and fresh intel from the breached safehouse, but victory etched in the rear view, the silver sedan's distant wreck, flames guttering in the rain, a symbol of the threat's reality. Coordinated, relentless, born from a leaked photo and unpaid debts spanning decades. As the vans merged onto a secondary road, weaving through Incheon's industrial sprawl, warehouses blurring into sodium-streaked shadows, the tension uncoiled into weary silence. Ji-yeon leaned against the seat, sodden and shivering, the burner's screen dark now, its role played. Hiroshi sat beside her, a shallow graze on his arm, seeping red through his sleeve. Injuries toll, a reminder that protection demanded sacrifice. Taeho handed over a blanket from the back, his eyes meeting hers with grandfatherly warmth. "The ledger's yours. Burn it or keep it. Min-soo's legacy, not chains." Hiroshi's hand found hers, not claiming but sharing the quiet. The debt's closed. "You choose your path, no shadows forced." His voice carried the Oyabun's restraint, shaped by loss, his daughter's death a ghost that mirrored Min-soo's vanishing, forging a code where power bowed to family, found, or blood. Ji-yeon squeezed back, the push-pull resolving into trust, autonomy preserved yet enriched by the bond they'd forged in tunnels and storms. The true treasure gleamed not in empires or spoils, but in this. Protection earned through peril, loyalty outlasting the grudges, a chosen circle where memory wove stronger than any ledger's ink. Dawn broke grey over Seoul as the convoy dispersed into safe anonymity, the Han River settling to a murmur below the city. Ji-yeon stepped from the final drop-off near her noodle house, the air crisp with petrichor and the promise of routine reclaimed. The adventure's scars lingered, exposure to rivals' eyes, the cost of a breached perimeter, but it had unearthed more than threats. Her mother's code of quiet defiance, Hiroshi's restrained power, Taeho's steadfast watch. In the quiet, as steam rose from the wet streets, she realized the spoils paled. What endured was the transformation. The family pieced from shadows, loyalty's flame brighter than any boss's throne, and in that light, the past's whispers finally stilled, leaving room for a future unburdened, yet forever marked by the river's unyielding flow. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.